Hello and welcome to a quick take episode of the Dream Job Ready podcast. Thanks for joining me. My name's Dane Sharp. I'm your host, and I wanted to reshare a great snippet of advice that I thought was brilliant from Denny Keynes in episode 26. Denny has a storied career and has had dream jobs with the likes of ESPN, Twitter, Channel 9, and more recently NextVR, which was a really cool virtual reality business that was bought out by Apple in 2020. He's held multiple senior level roles. So in the interview, I asked him about how he approaches hiring and managing people and how he approaches developing and leading big and diverse teams. I also went on to ask him for his thoughts as a boss on what makes an employee great, successful, and trustworthy. Here's that take.
The best employees are the ones that can have a can-do attitude that just can get the job done. I like to surround myself with people who don't just tell you about the problem, but they'll tell you about how they're going to solve the problem. So I've got no problem with anybody, coming to me on any given day and saying, Danny, this has gone wrong, or this is the problem today, or this is what we need, to solve. I mean, that's my job, right? In a sense, is to help them and make sure I can remove the roadblocks and ensure that I can give them a clear path to getting something done. But I always get a little frustrated with people who come in and just tell me the problem and just leave it there, and without a solution or without sort of active steps for how we can solve the problem. And it seems obvious when we talk about it now, but for a lot of people that are in the job, certainly in the early days, it's not clear to them. They think that they go to their boss with a problem and their boss will solve it. Yes, they will, but ultimately, come with the solution, and then your boss will help you, clear the path for you to get it solved with your solution. So that stuff is kind of been critical for me, is surrounding myself with the sort of can-do people. And then the rest is pretty easy. I mean, there's plenty of people that I've hired who are actually much better at the job than me. The thing which has been key in my career is, certainly as you grow a team, when I started at NextVR, I was just the only person on the content team, doing the entire flow of production. So it was the deal acquisitions or content deals. What sort of content do we think makes sense for the NextVR fan? Going and securing those deals, or negotiating them, bringing those deals in, and then overseeing the production of those deals, thinking about the content strategy for not just production but the distribution and the programming of it. And ultimately, syndication and monetization of it. Monetization, I'd hand off to the sales team, but still part of that process. And over time, as the team grew, I could break all those individual things I was doing. I could break them down, and I could bring people into the business that were actually experts at each of those individual roles. So you end up in a position where you're actually surrounded by a bunch of experts who are much better at doing all of these individual things than you ever were, and they all just make you look really good. So, but I mean, that's the key, is I could just ultimately then try and, from a leadership position and from a 36,000 foot view, in a sense, be able to look at the business and decide where we needed to make changes or where we needed to evolve the strategy, and then talk to the people I brought in to run those departments in order to get that stuff going. And it's a pretty efficient way to do it, and you end up with a team of people who not only can do the job better than you, but you have incredible trust and respect for as well, which is super important, because if you don't have the trust and respect, I mean, there's not a day that I was sending some farewell notes to some of the folks that I've worked with at NextVR over the last couple of weeks. One of the themes in the notes I was sending to them was that the reality is that on any given day, if something went wrong at the business, or if it was ever under some sort of pressure to get something done, they alleviated a lot of that, because I knew that they could deliver. I knew that if I had Josh, who was my head of production, I knew when there was a problem with an NFL camera position or an NBA camera position, or somebody was screaming blue murder for something that was shot that got broadcast that shouldn't have, I knew that those things would get solved, because these people that I put around me were absolute experts in their field.
And can you shed some light on, I imagine there's a plethora of different personality types within that. Can everyone be a problem solver? Can everyone, gain that trust of a manager to be a problem fixer?
No, they won't always come in as that, but you have to show them the path to what you need. And also you have to be willing to make the hard decisions. I mean, I've fired plenty of people, and not because they were terrible at the job, but just because they weren't necessarily the right cultural fit for my team, and that's the tough thing about tough choices, is that they're tough, right? You have to make them, and sometimes it's not fun, but ultimately, I sort of have this philosophy when it comes to hiring people. Hiring is hard. Like, finding a good person for a job is tough. Finding a great person is almost impossible. And so it's really difficult. You have to do your diligence, and you have to interview them enough, and you have to get enough input as to whether you think they're the right fit. And even then you could make the wrong decision. But if you hire somebody who's okay or good or even great at the job, you have to look at your best performer on the team, the person who you love and trust and who delivers time and time again. And you have to say to yourself, if I don't hire another one of those people, like, that's all the stuff I'm gonna lose. I'm gonna lose all the great things that amazing employee is. And that's a great lens to look through, because then you look at these people who are, he could be pretty good for the job, and realize pretty good doesn't cut it. Like, they have to be a superstar. And you can't compromise on that stuff, because ultimately it'll impact the business all the way down the chain, unless you get the right fit in the role from the very beginning. Because nobody likes sitting in a room and having to fire someone. Like, that's just the worst part of any job. But ultimately, that's what happens if you don't do the diligence in the hiring process in the first place.
Okay, that was Denny Keynes from episode 26, sharing his thoughts and advice on managing, developing and hiring people, and also what makes employees great. I loved his quote where he said, "Hiring is hard. Finding a good person for a job is tough, but finding a great person is almost impossible." It feels like that sometimes as a manager. And it's important to consider that opinion, especially if you're applying for jobs right now or fronting up at interviews. Do your prep work, be present at the interview, and put your best foot forward and on show. Look, I hope you found this quick take episode interesting and helpful. As always, please let me know via the dreamjobreadypodcast@gmail.com email, or let us know on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram. Please share this episode with someone important, or do me a solid and let them know about our show. And until next time, be good, and good luck getting your next dream job.
Please note that the opinions of guests are their own and not those of the companies they have worked for.